My dead husband calls me every night at 11:43 p.m. Last night he came home, and he wants me to join him. I never believed in ghosts. I always thought those who did were either gullible or desperately clinging to the hope of an afterlife. But now, as I sit here, trembling in a dingy motel room, my world has been turned upside down. I'm writing this as a warning, but also as a plea for help, because I don't know if what I'm experiencing is real or if I'm losing my mind. It all started 3 months ago when my husband, Jack, died in a car accident. The police said he'd fallen asleep at the wheel on his way home from a late-night shift at the hospital. He was a surgeon, you see, always putting others before himself. That's what I loved most about him. The first month after his death was a blur of grief and paperwork. I barely left our house, a beautiful Victorian we bought together just a year ago. It was supposed to be our forever home, where we'd raise our children and grow old together. Now, its spacious rooms and creaking floorboards only serve to amplify my loneliness. It was exactly 1 month after Jack's funeral when I received the first call. I was curled up on the couch, mindlessly flipping through channels on the TV. When my phone rang, I glanced at the screen and froze. Jack's name and picture were staring back at me. My heart raced as I answered the call with shaking hands. Hello? There was silence on the other end, a burst of static, and then, unmistakably, Jack's voice. Hey, honey, I'm on my way home. Traffic's bad, so I might be a little late. I couldn't breathe. It was his voice, his exact words, the way he always called when he was running late. But it couldn't be. I had canceled his phone plan weeks ago. Who is this? I demanded, my voice cracking. This isn't funny. More static, and then silence. The call ended. I sat there clutching my phone for what felt like hours. It had to be a cruel prank. I told myself someone had hacked his old number, used a voice modulator. But deep down, a part of me hoped that somehow, impossibly, it had really been Jack. The next day, I convinced myself it had been a dream, a product of my grief-stricken mind. But then it happened again and again. Every night at exactly 11:43 p.m., the time of Jack's accident, my phone would ring with his number. Sometimes it was just static. Other times, it was his voice saying things he'd said 100 times before. Don't forget to lock the back door. Did you remember to take your vitamins? I love you, Sarah. I tried everything. I changed my number. I got a new phone. I even stayed at a friend's house one night, but the calls followed me. After 2 weeks of this, I was a wreck. I wasn't sleeping. I could barely. My friends were worried, suggesting grief counseling or medication. But how could I explain what was happening without sounding insane? Then, things escalated. It started small. I'd wake up to find the TV on, tuned to Jack's favorite sports channel. The coffee maker would be running in the morning, brewing his preferred dark roast. His running shoes, which I packed away in the attic, would be by the front door, slightly damp as if they'd just been used. I told myself I was doing these things in my sleep, some subconscious attempt to keep Jack's routines alive. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. One night, about 2 months after Jack's death, I woke up to the sound of the shower running. For a moment, in my groggy state, I forgot. I thought it was just Jack getting ready for an early shift. Then reality came crashing back, and terror gripped me. I crept towards a bathroom, armed with a heavy candlestick from the hallway table. Steam was seeping out from under the door. With a troubling hand, I reached for the doorknob. The door swung open, revealing our large clawfoot tub. The shower was indeed running, the curtain drawn, and there, unmistakably, was the silhouette of a man behind the curtain. I screamed and ran from the house, not stopping until I reached my neighbor's front door. By the time the police arrived, the shower was off and there was no sign anyone had been there. The officers were but skeptical. They suggested I install security cameras and gave me the number for a local therapist. I didn't stay in the house that night or the next, but eventually I had to return. I couldn't afford a hotel indefinitely, and despite everything, it was still my home. The home Jack and I had chosen together. I installed the security cameras and suggested I change the locks. I even had a priest come and bless the house despite my lack of religious beliefs. The cameras never caught anything unusual, but the strange occurrences continued. Books would move from the shelves to Jack's old reading chair. The piano we bought together but never learned to play would sometimes emit soft melodies in the middle of the night. And always, there were the phone calls. I was losing touch with reality. I stopped going to work, stopped seeing friends. I was scared to leave the house, but terrified to stay in it. I felt like I was living in a waking nightmare. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, exactly 3 months since Jack's death. I had finally managed to fall into a fitful sleep around midnight. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak and groan of the old wooden frame settling. I jolted awake at 2:00 a.m., that witching hour when the world feels most wrong. Something had woken me, but I couldn't tell what. Then I heard its soft, shuffling footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom, my body rigid with fear. I strained my ears, trying to convince myself it was just the house settling again. But no, there it was, the unmistakable sound of breathing just outside my door. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed. I watched in horror as the doorknob slowly turned. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped into the room in the dim light, filtering through the curtains. I could make out the shape of a man. My breath caught in my throat as he moved closer, his features becoming clearer. It was Jack, but not Jack as I'd last seen him smiling and waving goodbye as he left for work that fateful day. This was Jack as he must have looked after the accident, pale, with dark circles under his eyes and a large gash across his forehead. He stood there at the foot of our bed, staring at me with eyes that looked both familiar and terrifyingly wrong. His mouth opened, and in a voice that was both Jack's and not Jack's, he spoke. "Sarah," he said, his voice a raspy whisper, "I've come home." In that moment, the paralysis that engripped me shattered. I screamed, louder than I've ever screamed in my life, and bolted from the bed. I ran past the thing that looked like Jack, feeling a cold rush of air as I brushed past it. I thundered down the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. Behind me, I could hear heavy footsteps following and that awful voice calling my name. I reached the front door and fumbled with the locks, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the keys. Just as I heard those footsteps reach the top of the stairs, I managed to wrench the door open. I ran into the street, not caring that I was in my pajamas, not caring about the cold autumn air biting at my skin. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they might give out. When I finally stopped gasping for air, I found myself in the park where Jack and I used to have picnics on sunny weekends. I collapsed onto a bench, my mind reeling from what I just experienced. Was it real? Had I finally snapped? My grief manifesting as a terrifying hallucination? Or was there really something supernatural happening? Something that defied all logic and reason? I sat there until the sky began to lighten, my mind churning with these questions. As the first joggers and dog walkers began to appear, I realized I couldn't go back to that house. Not now. Maybe not ever. I used my phone, which thankfully I grabbed in my panic, to book a room at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. That's where I am now, trying to make sense of everything that's happened. I don't know what to do next. I can't go to the police. They already think I'm unstable from grief. My friends and family wouldn't believe me, and I'm terrified of going back to the house to gather my things. But I know I can't stay here forever. Sooner or later, I'll have to face what's happening. I just don't know if I have the strength to do it alone. If anyone out there has experienced anything like this, please, I'm begging you, reach out to me. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me how to make it stop. Because right now, as I sit here in this unfamiliar room with its peeling wallpaper and musty smell, I'm more afraid than I've ever been in my life. Not just of what I saw in my bedroom, but of what it means. If that really was Jack or something pretending to be Jack, what does it want from me? Why has it been haunting our home, calling me every night? Is it trying to tell me something about his death, or does it have more sinister intentions? And if it's not real, if it's all in my head, then what does that say about my mental state? Am I so broken by grief that I'm conjuring up these terrifying visions? I don't know which possibility scares me more. As I write this, my phone sits silent on the bedside table. It's 11:42 p.m. In 1 minute, if the pattern holds, it will ring. Jack's name and face will light up the screen, and I'll be faced with a choice: answer and hear that familiar yet wrong voice, or ignore it and wonder what I might be missing. Part of me wants to smash the phone to run as far away from this town as I can get. But another part, a part I'm afraid to acknowledge, wants to go back to the house to confront whatever it is that's there to understand. Because living like this in constant fear and uncertainty isn't really living at all. And if there's even a chance that some part of Jack is trying to reach me, don't I owe it to him, to us, to find out why? So tomorrow, when the sun is high and the world feels a little less terrifying, I'm going back. I'll walk into that house with my head held high, and I'll demand answers. From Jack, from whatever's pretending to be Jack, or from my own fractured psyche. I don't know what I'll find. I don't know if I'll ever post on here again. But if you're reading this, please keep me in your thoughts. And if you hear a story on the news about a woman in Redacted who disappeared from her Victorian home, or who was found babbling about phone calls from the dead, know that it's me. Know that I tried to understand. And please don't let them forget about Jack, because whatever is happening, whatever has been calling me, visiting our home, standing in our bedroom, it all comes back to him. My Jack, the man I loved, the man I lost, and maybe in some impossible, terrifying way, the man who's found his way back to me. The clock has just ticked over to 11:43 p.m. My phone is ringing. Jack's face is smiling up at me from the screen. This time, I'm going to answer. Wish me luck.